Rejection today, at least to this point. Last week we started lesson 2 on our series, Jesus the Christ. There were a few sheets still out at the back, so if you need one, hold up your hand and Steve might bring you one if you needed one. This is going to be difficult for me because I have all my notes on that PowerPoint. So let's go back and review a little bit. Number 11, the angel who came to Mary. What was that angel's name? Uh-oh. Turn the projector on. You don't know how happy I am. Gabriel, right? I'm sure somebody said that. Gabriel. The only other angel that we see named is Michael, mentioned in Revelation, talking about the warring between Satan and heaven. Number 12, angel's message to Joseph. Joseph was having concerns. Mary's been found to be pregnant. They're not married. He automatically assumes, as most of us would, she hasn't been faithful to me. So he's going to put her away privately, not make a big scene out of it, not soil her reputation. And the angel says, basically, don't do that. Fear not to take Mary as your wife. Okay? You all are as interested in that as I am. Number 13, Jesus' place of birth. Okay, Bethlehem. We mentioned, I think it's an interesting point, God even used the Roman government. Would you consider that to be evil? I would consider that for the most part to be evil. He used an evil influence in the world to make sure that Mary and Joseph were where they needed to be when Jesus was born. Okay? God can do anything. Remember? With God, nothing is impossible. We talked about that verse last week. Okay, a decree was issued for census, for tax purposes. Everybody go back to your hometown, place of your lineage. Joseph was of the lineage of David. David, the city of David, Bethlehem. So that's where they go back. And while they are there, ought to be able to just hit slideshow up at the top. Let's see if I can do it. Are you hitting the button? Okay. May have to have you do it. Anyway, going back to the next slide. Bethlehem, house of bread, city of David, so that's where they go back. That is prophesied to where Jesus was going to be born. All right, number 14. The shepherds told of Jesus' birth. Who told them? Okay, the angels, they remember they were in the field. They were not in the fold. Sometime between March and October, not December, is when this took place. So the shepherds were told of Jesus' birth. They go to the stable because the inn was full. They had to find a place. So they're there where they keep the animals, find Jesus in a manger. Still not working. Next one. Sign of the wise man, we talked about this. Number 15, they saw a star. The evidence is that they were not at the stable. You know, we see the nativity, Christmas time images. and the wise men are there with Jesus in the manger. That's not the way it happened. They saw the sign, or saw the star. They come, they talk to Herod. They say, "Where is he that's born King of the Jews, the new king?" Herod gets concerned about this, asks where this was, asks the people that were well schooled in the law. They go back to Micah chapter 5, verse 2. It says he's going to be born in Bethlehem. So they go that direction, the wise men. When they get there, it says they enter into the house and find the young child. It doesn't say they show up at the stable and there's the infant wrapped in swaddling clothes. Okay? All right, go to the next one. So how many wise men were there? We don't know. There was enough. It says wise men, so we know that there was at least two. Okay? Why is it common, accepted? Why is it told that there are three wise men? Because of the gifts. Go to the next. This is the one we got to. The gifts of the wise men, what were they? Three of them. Okay? Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. All right? So let's talk about that. We know what gold is, so I didn't make a slide about gold. Go to the next one, please, Jerry. But what's frankincense? There's the scientific, boy, that's awful. The scientific name, Boswellia sacra. Frankincense is an aromatic resin. It's a fancy way to say goopy, sticky stuff that comes out of a tree. Sap. We know what that is, right? Go out and lean up against a pine tree certain time of the year, and there's that goopy stuff coming out of it. Okay? Aromatic means it smells good. So a good smelling sap, and it's obtained from this Boswellia tree. Okay? Or bush. It's used in incense as well as perfumes. Well, that makes sense. So they come and offer it. Gold, it's a valuable, exchangeable commodity to have, gold. Frankincense, used for anointing. Okay? Go to the next one, Jerry. What was the other one? Myrrh. I'll let you figure that. Comphora, maybe. Myrrh. It's a reddish brown, resinous. That's that sticky sap again. Material. There it says dried sap of a number of trees, but primarily from that Comphora tree, which is native. Look at this: Yemen, Somalia, and eastern parts of Ethiopia. Okay? So for them to have it at this area tells me that it was very rare. They would have had to import it from a different place. So it's valuable. So gold, we understand gold's still valuable today. Frankincense was valuable because of the smelling good feel that you would get from it. And then myrrh also. Ancient history is used for perfumes and incense. And as we mentioned there, it was highly valued. So 3 highly valued gifts that were brought. Okay? All right. So 3 gifts. It's assumed that there were 3 wise men, but we don't have any evidence to say for sure. Could have been a lot. Or it might have been 2. Somewhere in between. All right? All right. Sacrifice made to present the infant Jesus to the Lord. According to the old law, and we're going through that on Wednesday night, they had offerings and gifts, a bunch of them. That's just the best way that I can say it. As we're going through this and we're reading Numbers and Leviticus, and we'll read Deuteronomy, there was an offering and another offering and a different offering and an offering for this and an offering for that. Well, one thing that they offered were made an offering for newborn children. Okay? We know that on the 8th day boys were circumcised. We understand that. But on about the 40th day, there had to be an offering made at the temple. And this is, I will show you, Leviticus chapter 12 talks about this. Leviticus chapter 12, verse 2 and then verses 6 and 8. And it talks about what that offering was supposed to be. A normal, is that the right word? The typical or stated offering was to be a lamb. Okay? A family was to offer a lamb as sacrifice, an offering to God to recognize this newborn. Okay? But there was an exception. If a family was poor and could not afford a lamb, somebody reading there, what does it say in the reading? You don't have to read it if you've read it and you know what it says. What was the gift that could be substituted for a lamb if the family was poor? Okay? A couple of birds. Okay? Turtle doves or pigeons, and I guess there's a difference. I saw pictures of one, and one looked like it had a larger neck and head. Anyway, not very distinguishable type birds, right? If you have a barn, you know about those kind of birds. You go to a larger city and go to a park, there's pigeons and all kinds of birds just around. So it wasn't something that was very expensive, so the poor could afford it. Okay? So 2 turtle doves and 2 pigeons. This is Luke chapter 2. Okay? Leviticus chapter 12 talks about it, and then they're fulfilling this 40 days after Jesus' birth. It's part of the purification process. Okay? And that is there, Luke 2:24. Let's go ahead. Somebody read that. Jerry, what question are we on? Okay. Luke 2:21 through 24. Somebody read that. Okay. In our study here, and chronologically, there's some conflict. Not conflict with the Bible, but the way this was put together and the way that I presented it. The 40 days, it's after this period of time that I would say, if you were looking at it and read it the right way, it's after this 40 days when the wise men show up. Okay? We didn't present it that way. Okay? So the wise men show up between this 40-day period and the next question, Jerry. We get to this part where Herod finds out or thinks that he's been tricked because the wise men don't go back to him. They're told to go home and don't go back to Herod. First of all, Herod's intentions were not honorable, and he probably would have killed them. So they were told not to go back and say where they found Jesus, that he was alive, and what Herod was looking for, to go there and kill him. So they were told not to go do that, not to tell Herod. So Herod figures this out that, hey, they've in his mind, they've tricked me, they've deceived me and not come back to me. That's not what they did. They were doing what God told them to do. But they went home, and Herod figures it out, and so now he's got a problem. He's got this new king born. He's worried, okay, that he's going to take his throne eventually. And so what does he decide to do? Well, it says it right the first word there, doesn't it? He's going to kill the infant. So the king that issued that decree is Herod the Great. You can put that on your answer sheet. So Herod is going to kill Jesus, but in order to do that, because he doesn't know where, he knows Bethlehem, but he doesn't know specifically where or who. So what does he determine he's going to do? That makes sense, doesn't it? I want to kill one, so I'm going to kill them all to make sure I get the one that I want to kill. How vile and evil is that? That's ridiculous, isn't it? We saw that before in the Old Testament. You remember where that was at? Killing of infants. Okay, with Moses. And that wasn't to specifically kill one. That was to just kind of thin out the population, if you remember that. The Egyptians felt like the Israelites were getting too powerful. So this is what we'll do. We'll just kill all the baby boys. That'll keep them from getting that way, getting stronger. So Herod decides he's going to kill all the infants. Now, I'm telling you this, the wise men, 40 days at least up to this point of, I started to give the answer. How old of babies did Herod, do you remember that? How old of babies? If you were above this age, you were safe, I guess. 2, right? So something in Herod's mind told him that between the time that the wise men first got there, Jesus was born, all those things, it's been at the most 2 years, right? So I would say between 40 days of the offering and 2 years, that's how long it's been since Jesus has been born at this point. When Herod makes that decision, he's going to kill all the babies. Wouldn't have been more than 2. That doesn't make sense, right? Because if Jesus was 3 or 4, then killing 2-year-olds, what good's that going to do? So Herod's determined it's going to be 2 years old, so in his mind, Jesus has only been born less than 2 years. And we know that it's more than 40 days because the offering of the turtle doves, or the pigeons, has taken place. All right? And I think we can put when the wise men came to the house and saw the young child, somewhere between the 40 days and the 2 years. Am I making sense? All right. I saw some of this and some.
That's because Herod left them to go out and tell him where they were so he could kill
Sure.
all the ones and identify Jesus specifically without anything.
Right. And if they would have went back and said, hey, this is where we found him and this was the house that we went into, and they would have went right there, he wouldn't have gone to that extreme. Herod, speaking of Herod, wouldn't have gone to that extreme, would have taken care of it. But he felt like he didn't have any choice. Okay? So, we get to question 20. This killing of the infants is taking place, and in order for Jesus to be safe, Joseph receives a message and says that you need to escape, and where do they go? Okay, they go to Egypt, right? God's people escaped to Egypt once before, didn't they? Okay? The family of Jacob, remember during the famine, Joseph was already there. They come to buy. And so eventually Joseph reveals himself, tells the whole family, 70, I think, came at that point. They were there over 400 years, grew into this great nation. That's kind of where we were at with getting back to Moses. They'd become such a great nation, the Egyptians feared them. So this is the second time that the nation of Egypt is going to play a prominent role in protection. That's the way I've always seen it back with the family of Jacob. 70 of them in the land that they lived in where most people didn't get along. Was there going to be much of a chance that they were going to do that without strife or conflict? Probably not. But if they went to Egypt under the protection of Joseph, they grew into this great nation. So, an incubation period for this great nation. So this is the same thing. Protection. Egypt is providing protection. First of all, Herod wouldn't find him in Egypt. But if he did happen to find him in Egypt and tried to go and invade Egypt, that's probably not going to work out very well either, just to try to kill this one baby. So the nation they escaped to, boy, that's a messed up deal, isn't it? All right, so the nation they escaped to is Egypt. They're protected there. We'll look at this. The timeline, sometime between 40 and 2 years. We talked about that. Herod tried to kill all of those 2 years and under based on the time the star appeared. Joseph was told in a dream by the Lord to flee to Egypt. Following the death of Herod, Herod's going to die. Okay? With Herod dead, it's safe now to come back, right? Kind of. Maybe. If-ish. Look at what we got here. Following the death of Herod, Joseph is told in the dream he can return to the land of Israel. He's going to go back to Judea. That's Bethlehem, Jerusalem area. But Herod's son, Archelaus, he's still the king in Judea. And so they say, the dream tells him, or the message tells him, don't stop in Judea, but go on to Galilee. Because Herod's son, Archelaus, his power, he doesn't have the power. That's the best word I can think of. He doesn't have the authority to carry out anything against anybody, really, in the northern part of the land of Israel, the Galilee part, around the sea, the area around the Sea of Galilee. So that's kind of where we're at. So, Jesus is born in Bethlehem. They're there for a while, told to flee, go to Egypt. They come back. They go back to where Mary and Joseph were from. Remember, how did they get to Bethlehem? Did they live in Bethlehem? Decree. Everybody in that area, go back to that hometown of your lineage. For Joseph, remember, city of David, Bethlehem. So that's why they were in Bethlehem, and they stayed there for a while, went to Egypt, come back. So now they just bypass that area, keep going up north. Go ahead and click that, because I think we'll talk about Nazareth. Go to the next one, because I think it's a map. Hopefully it's on there. So there's where we're at. Can you see, is that red to you at the bottom? The red circle, that's Jerusalem and Bethlehem. And about 65 miles north of that is Nazareth. Okay? We call that Galilee because at the very top, hopefully you can make that out. My clicker doesn't shine today. But that's the Sea of Galilee. So that area around there would have been called the area, or it's called Galilee. One of the cities of that area was Nazareth. Okay? Nazareth, an old Hebrew word that means branch. Hebrew word that means branch. John 1:46. When I think about Nazareth, of course you think about the hometown of Jesus or where he grew up. But the second thing I always think about Nazareth, I think it's John 1:46. So what does it say concerning this person? But really it's a jab at the whole city of Nazareth. What is it? Can anything good come out of Nazareth? So it's a city of a poor or bad reputation, right? Not a very good place. Wouldn't have been a place if you and I were picking, maybe. Other than it was just happened to be, we'll call it the area, hometown of Joseph and Mary. That's why they went back there. If you could have went anywhere, why would you go to a town of bad reputation? Well, it had some importance to them, family maybe. Joseph would have had business connections, maybe there. But a city of bad reputation. It continues even worse, gets worse than that. Jesus is in this area around Galilee. I looked and it doesn't specifically say Nazareth, but there's at one point early in his ministry that they drag him out of a city, and we know it wasn't Capernaum because that's where he goes next, I think, after this. But they drag him out of the city and they're going to throw him over a cliff. And then specifically in the book of Mark 6, 1 through 6, the city absolutely rejects Jesus. And this would have been even including some of his half-brothers at this point. So it's the hometown of Jesus until he was about 30. He starts his ministry. City later rejects him during that ministry. And living there was a fulfillment of prophecy. And let me give you that verse. I think it's Isaiah 53:3. And it talks about a root. No. It talks about a branch. Remember I said branch was Hebrew. Nazareth, Hebrew, branch. A branch will rise up out of, says Jesse. Who's Jesse? Okay. The father of David, the king. David, we've already had the prophecy that one would rise up from David's throne. So this prophecy says a branch will rise up out of Jesse. I'm glad there are people that have studied. I never would have made that. That's a connection from prophecy. If somebody didn't tell me about it, I wouldn't have known. I would have got the Jesse part, but the branch part, branch being Nazareth. So a branch would rise up, or someone would rise up out of Nazareth from Jesse. Isaiah 53:3, I think that's right. Mark 6:4, that we've mentioned there, the city would reject him, and we know that. A prophet is not without honor, even in his own country. Okay? I think we see that the people that are hardest on them are the people that, politicians and movie stars and athletes. The first ones to turn on someone that's famous from an area is the people that knew them when they were growing up. We see that a lot. Maybe not always, but we see it. Hey, we know them. They're not all that special, kind of deal. And so we see that even with Jesus in his hometown, they're going to reject him. Try it again, Jerry. All right, age Jesus went, and I've got to have it there in quotation marks, missing. Why would I have missing in quotation marks? He knew right where he was at, didn't he? He wasn't missing. Okay? Now to his parents, they didn't know where he was at, so that's okay. So go ahead. What age is that? 12. So from this early age, they go back to Nazareth to about 12. We don't have any history. In fact, this is the only other thing that we're going to have till he's about 30 years old. Okay? They're required to go back to Jerusalem for feasts. They're going back this time for Passover, one of the 3 feasts they had to go to. This tells you that they are trying to keep the law of Moses as a family led by Joseph as closely as they can. They're on their way back. They travel in a group, large group. They'd start at Nazareth. Maybe some more would join in as they kind of went through or around Samaria, however they went that direction. But they get there, they do whatever it is that they were supposed to do for Passover, and they start back. Okay? They get about a day's journey away, and they realize that Jesus isn't with their company. They're kind of, traveling with this maybe family or group going that direction north toward Nazareth. Jesus isn't with them, so they're a day away. They have to travel a day back. They look for him for part of a third day, so he's missing for 3 days. Where do they find him? Probably right where they should have looked first. If they had known and understand the way that we can kind of look back and see, that would have been the first place we look, right there doing, as he says later, his Father's business. He's questioning and answering with the leaders there in the temple. Okay? They returned to Jerusalem. They did this every year. Find him on the third day, listening and asking questions. That's verse 46. We're in Luke chapter 2, by the way. And then verse 49, we're about to run out of time, so I'll get through this. I do want to do the last two. We'll just mention them. Verse 49, I must be about my Father's business, if you want to mark that verse down. Go to number 23, Jerry. Luke 2:52. Jesus increased in wisdom, stature, favor with God and man. He developed fully as a human does and should. Okay? Wisdom, stature, favor with God and man. Mentally, physically, socially, spiritually. All right. This is all we have just about from the first 30 years or so of Jesus' life. Except number 24. We'll skip on that one. Jesus' trade. Okay, he was a carpenter. Okay, Matthew 13, 55, 56 says, is this not the carpenter's son? Okay. Historically, whatever the father did, the offspring, the children would do the same thing. But we can even pin it down better than that Jesus actually had worked or performed tasks as a carpenter, handyman, a craftsman of some sort with building. Mark 6:3. Remember we talked about Mark chapter 6, Nazareth is going to reject. One of the derogatory things, I would call it that, or they would have been said in that way, is this not the carpenter's son, is this not the carpenter? So that's how they would have recognized him at that point, that he was a carpenter's son, but that also that he himself was a carpenter. All right, they're waiting. If Levi was here, he's not here today, but he would have already been in here. There's the reading for next week. If you didn't get one of those, I think Miss Coralou said there was some still out there. If you want to get the reading